Well, now it's halfway through 2025, and COVID's been over for a while, and we're actually learning how things really were. We're learning just today. I read on Global News, which was such a propagandist during the whole fracas. Global News is now saying how the vaccine injury bureaucracy jokes around all day, watches Netflix, goofs off, like they're finally starting to mock and deride and criticize the people in the white lab coats. We're starting to see some independent thinking happen, about 5 years too late, but here it is. And I say all this because I just got some good news moments ago. And here to tell us that good news is someone who has been fighting these battles from the darkest days. His name is John Carpe. He's the boss of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, and he joins us now via Zoom from Calgary. John, welcome back. Great to see you. We were just talking a moment ago about a decision that I am quite pleasantly surprised by. Why don't you say it? What is the news in the case of the government versus Evan Blackman? Why don't you tell us who Evan Blackman is and what the latest news is in his court fight?
So Evan Blackman is one of many Canadians that was wrongfully arrested and unjustly charged criminally for having done nothing criminal, but just participating in the peaceful Freedom Convoy protests in Ottawa. So he was arrested February 2022 when there was the violent crackdown under the Emergencies Act. And he was acquitted at trial. The only thing the Crown had was a video from a drone and no audio. And interestingly, the video shows Evan Blackman encouraging it looked like there might be an altercation between protesters and police. Evan Blackman was holding his hands out to tell the other protesters to stand back. He got down on his knees and took off his hat, put his hand over his heart and sang "O Canada." And there's 5 minutes of footage. He's kneeling before the police.
Wow.
Very peacefully.
Wow.
And so he's acquitted of all charges. Unfortunately, the Crown appealed. And
unbelievable. That in itself is so abusive. And that's in Ontario, eh? You know what?
Yeah.
For all the criticism of Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney, it's Ontario's prosecutors who are leading the fight against Mr. Blackman and against Tamara Leach. And you can't put that on Trudeau or Carney. That is on Doug Ford and his Attorney General. Sorry for the interruption. Back to you.
No. Well, and these same Crown prosecutors complained publicly about that there's a lack of resources. So for people charged with sexual assault, murder, serious crimes, they need to get to a trial within 30 months, right? Otherwise it's going to be dismissed. And the Ontario Crown prosecutors state publicly that they don't have enough resources. And so you have people accused of murder, rape, aggravated assault who are walking away without a trial, and yet the Crown prosecutors in Ontario are prosecuting people like Chris Barber, Tamara Leach, Evan Blackman.
Hey, let me interrupt before you go any further. You mentioned this prosecutor. Do you know him by name by any chance? I know that's a detail that you might not have in front of you. Okay, because there are some out-of-control prosecutors. I'm starting to get to know their names. One of them who was really started the battle against Tamara Leach, Moise Karimchi is his name, just completely emotionally out of control, really a rogue actor. He was actually suspended from working on Tamara Leach's case. I can't believe he's still practicing law, let alone for a prosecutor. Anyways, I'll follow up with that later. But so Blackman was acquitted. The Crown is appealing, even though their evidence seems quite weak. So that appeal is coming. But I understand, you told me this just moments ago, that something sort of neat happened. Now, you're going to have to explain it in layman's terms because it's a sort of a technical subpoena. But why don't you tell us what an Ontario judge just ordered? And this goes to my point that we're no longer in the madness of 2021 and 2022 when judges were doing crazy things like locking churches and making people read out self-denunciations. Maybe judges are getting a little more balanced now. Tell us what the latest is.
So Evan Blackman, like hundreds of other Canadians, he suffered the freezing of his bank accounts. And of course, this happened suddenly, caused great hardship on him. He's a businessman. He's running his business through bank accounts. So I guess like all businessmen do. And this, of course, was denounced by the federal court in January 2024, a court action with several groups, including the Justice Center, were participating in that when the court ruled that Trudeau acted illegally when declaring a national emergency. And the court also ruled that the freezing of bank accounts was an unjustified violation of the charter right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure. So in the course of this appeal, what our lawyers have done is we have made an application to the court for an order that the RCMP and the Toronto Dominion Bank be ordered to turn over all of their relevant documents relating to the freezing of the bank account of Evan Blackman, because this could be relevant in his defense. And the court is interested in seeing what was the thinking here. Why were his accounts frozen? And did the freezing of his accounts, was there a relationship between that and the criminal prosecution? And so our lawyers made the application, and we got an order from the judge, I believe it was July 2nd, stating that the RCMP and the TD Bank are compelled to turn over the documents about the freezing of the bank accounts of Evan Blackman. And as far as I know, that's the first time in Canadian history that we're going to see some documents pertaining to this very mysterious and nefarious behind the scenes, doing their dirty deeds in darkness, freezing of bank accounts. We're going to see some documents, and that should be extremely interesting.
It absolutely. And first of all, I'm going to make a prediction, which is the TD Bank or the RCMP or both are going to appeal this subpoena because they might not want their dirty deeds done in the dark to be brought to the light. And they've got nothing but money for lawyers, don't they? So my first prediction is they're going to appeal this because they do not want what they said privately and internally to come out. The second thing is, I think if that fails, if this subpoena maintains, I know I'm going to sound conspiratorial here, John, but it wouldn't surprise me if the prosecutor drops the appeal so that this can't happen. What I'm getting at, John, is if you were able to smoke out what TD Bank said and heard and was told and who they talked to, and what the RCMP was told and who they talked to, I'm guessing it's something so dark that the government would do anything. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if within the next week, forget the appeal, John. I think they're going to drop the charges against Mr. Blackman, drop the appeal, because they would do anything to avoid those documents coming to light.
What you've just said is within the realm of the possible. We'll have to wait and see. But I'll tell you, I saw something similar, Ezra. This is going back 2 or 3 years. We had numerous clients who were charged with failing to use the ArriveCAN, right? So we were providing lawyers for people with the, as you were with the Democracy Fund, people charged, fined, $5,000 or $10,000 or more for not using this stupid dysfunctional app. And we tried so hard to get this before the court as a constitutional challenge to say we're challenging the constitutionality of the requirement. And yet whenever we had a trial scheduled on the merits where we were going to argue the constitutionality and the government would be forced to come into court with its witnesses, expert or otherwise, and testify for the medical scientific basis for forcing everybody to use the ArriveCAN app, whenever it got to something on the merits, the Crown would withdraw or the government's witnesses wouldn't show up and we would win, but we win these victories without getting to the heart of the matter, which is that the federal government had no scientific basis or medical basis for these lockdown policies.